She was designed to be a lie. When her construction first began, she looked like nothing more than a beautiful ocean liner. A fast, elegant, modern passenger ship built to carry travelers across the Pacific in comfort and luxury. But hidden inside her blueprints was a secret. From the very beginning, she was built to become a warship. And just a few years later, that secret would transform her into a Japanese aircraft carrier and send her to the bottom of the sea in a wall of fire. This is the story of the Hiyō, the luxury liner that went to war. In the late 1930s, a Japanese shipping company began building a brand new passenger liner called the Izumo Maru. She was meant to be one of the finest ships of her kind. Sleek, fast, and modern, a symbol of a confident and prosperous nation. But Japan was already quietly preparing for a war it expected to fight, and the Navy had reached a secret arrangement with the shipping company. The Navy agreed to pay a large share of the cost of building the liner, roughly 60%. In return, the ship was secretly designed so that she could be rapidly converted into an aircraft carrier the moment war broke out. On the surface, she was a civilian cruise ship. Underneath, she was a warship simply waiting for her orders. That moment came sooner than almost anyone expected. In early 1941, with war rushing toward the Pacific, the Navy bought the unfinished liner outright. Her construction was completely redirected. The grand passenger decks and the luxurious fittings were stripped away and replaced by a hangar and a long, flat flight deck. The elegant liner, Izumo Maru, quietly vanished, and in her place rose a brand new warship. She was given a new name, Hiyō, which means flying hawk. By the summer of 1942, she was complete, armed, and ready for battle. She even had a sister, a second liner transformed in exactly the same way, named the Junyo. But the Hiyō carried the marks of her origins, and not all of them were helpful. Because she had been born as a passenger liner, her hull was never built to the same tough, military standard as a purpose-designed warship. Her engines, based on a civilian design, made her noticeably slower than the elite fleet carriers she was expected to fight beside. She could carry more than 50 aircraft, which made her genuinely useful. But she was thinner-skinned and far more vulnerable than the ships that had been built for war from the keel up. The Hiyō was a compromise. A merchant ship dressed in the armor of a warrior, and that compromise would eventually cost her dearly. Still, by this stage of the war, Japan needed every carrier it could find, and the Hiyō was thrown straight into the fight. She joined the brutal struggle around Guadalcanal in late 1942, but misfortune seemed to follow her. She was forced to miss one major battle entirely when a fire broke out in her generator room and sent her limping back to port for repairs. Time and again, her aircraft were taken off the ship and sent to fight from land bases instead. Then, in the middle of 1943, she was hit by a torpedo and spent 3 long months under repair. Through all of it, she somehow survived, patched up again and again, and sent back into a war that was slowly and steadily turning against Japan. If you are enjoying this deep dive into the lost ships of the Pacific, please take a second to subscribe. This channel brings the forgotten warships and the buried mysteries of the sea back to life, with a brand new story every single week. That one simple click genuinely helps these stories reach more people who would love them. Now, we come to the final battle of the Hiyō. By the middle of 1944, Japan was running out of both time and options. The Americans were closing in on the vital Mariana Islands, and the Japanese Navy gathered nearly all of its remaining carriers for one last enormous gamble. A single massive battle was meant to halt the American advance once and for all. It became the largest carrier battle in human history, the Battle of the Philippine Sea. The Hiyō sailed as part of that desperate fleet, but the battle very quickly turned into a catastrophe for Japan. Wave after wave of Japanese aircraft were shot out of the sky by better trained American pilots flying superior planes. The losses were so lopsided that the American aviators gave the slaughter a grimly cheerful nickname. They called it the Turkey Shoot. Then, on the evening of the 20th of June, American scout planes finally located the retreating Japanese fleet. The Americans made a bold and risky decision. They launched a huge long-range strike at the very edge of darkness, sending hundreds of aircraft racing toward the enemy, knowing that many of them might run out of fuel before they could ever make it home. The American planes came screaming down on the Japanese ships in the last red light of the day. And one of their primary targets was the converted liner Hiyō. The Hiyō was struck by an American torpedo. At first, the damage alone might have been something she could survive, but the Hiyō shared the same hidden and deadly weakness that was destroying other Japanese carriers in that very same battle. The torpedo hit ruptured her fuel systems, and highly flammable gasoline vapor began to spread silently through the inside of the ship. All it needed was a single spark. When that spark came, a massive explosion tore through the Hiyō from within, set off by her own leaking fuel. Flames swept across her decks. The same invisible killer that had destroyed the powerful new carrier Taiho just one day earlier was now ripping the heart out of the liner that became a warship. There is one truly haunting detail in the final moments of the Hiyō. According to Japanese accounts of the battle, the fatal blow may have been delivered by a single American torpedo plane that was already on fire. The crew of that aircraft had bailed out, but the burning, pilotless plane carried on through the air, struck the carrier, and then plunged into the sea beyond her. If the story is true, then the Hiyō was helped to her death by a doomed aircraft, abandoned by the very men who had been flying it moments before. As night closed in, it was clear the Hiyō was finished. The order to abandon ship rang out across her burning decks. The crew lowered her ensign and began climbing down into the darkness, while Japanese destroyers pushed in close to pull survivors from the water. Her captain had fully intended to go down with his ship, in the grim tradition of the sea, but he was swept off the deck by the rushing water and dragged alive from the waves. At around 7:30 that evening, the Hiyō lifted her bow toward the night sky and slid beneath the surface stern first. She carried 247 of her men down with her. More than 1,000 others were saved, plucked from the dark water by the destroyers circling around her grave. The loss of the Hiyō was only one part of a much larger disaster. In just 36 hours during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, Japan lost 3 aircraft carriers: the Hiyō, the brand new Taiho, and the famous veteran Shokaku. The backbone of the Japanese carrier force had been broken in a single battle, and it would never truly recover. From that moment on, Japan was fighting a war at sea that it could no longer hope to win. And the Hiyō herself was never seen again. She lies somewhere in the deep waters of the Philippine Sea, far beneath the surface, in an ocean grave that has never been located. No expedition has ever found her. No camera has ever revealed her wreck resting on the seabed. The luxury liner that was born in secret to become a warship now lies in total darkness, undiscovered to this very day. In the end, the story of the Hiyō is the story of a ship that was never quite what she appeared to be. She was built as a symbol of peacetime luxury, designed in secret for war, and finally lost in one of the most one-sided naval battles ever fought. She was a passenger liner that never once carried a paying passenger, and a warship undone by the very fuel that kept her aircraft flying. The Flying Hawk took wing for only 2 short years, and somewhere beneath the Philippine Sea, in the cold and the dark, she is waiting still.